Hey everybody, and welcome back to another book review. Empty classroom. It's the last day of school, so we are getting ready to head out to Kings Island. But this book, another Jane Austen book, I think it's the last of the Jane Austens that... Actually, that's not true. I think I still have one more Jane Austen that I haven't read. But Persuasion. So I was actually very excited to read this book because I watched the newer movie that came out, I think in 2022, and it was awful. I was like, I don't know what's happening in this movie, and I hate that she kept breaking the fourth wall and all this. It didn't make sense for what the story seemed to be. But having read it now, I'm like, okay, kind of made sense, but still didn't fully make sense. I just really think that that particular version of the movie could have been done much better. But the story itself is actually again on the higher end of the things that I like from Austen. I still want it to be not as talking. Why are we still having a conversation about the thing? I just feel like she just drones on and on and on for pages about one particular thing that is super minor. And I don't think I really realized it until this book, but the way that she brings in side characters, she starts talking about them like they're going to be some major plot point, and they're not. And that just kind of bothers me. But overall, this book was fairly good. I did enjoy it. I particularly like the fact that, at least in Persuasion, that the characters are older. So they're a little bit more experienced women. So they're all, in their mid to late 20s. Which means that they've had a little bit more life experience, and I like that because I feel like a lot of times the other characters are still so very young. Not to say that they haven't had life experience, but you think very differently when you're 20 to 22 versus when you are 28 to 32. There's just more that's happened, and I think I identified a little bit more with the characters because I did get married later, term used loosely, in my 20s, and when they were talking about how she broke off the engagement because she was persuaded to break off the engagement. I wasn't engaged, but I was in a long-term relationship in my early 20s, and basically at the point of, we basically should be getting engaged, and then he broke it off. And so, I completely understood where she was coming from, and he and I have since talked, and we are very good friends now. But, it's just one of those things happen, but you think so differently now that you're older, and it took us several years before we talked, and again, we were older, so we were able to kind of look back on our younger selves and be like, here's where I made the mistakes, but also marrying for love and not just because the rest of the world says so, I think is a big factor that I don't feel like was super well explored in the book, with the exception of the two main characters of they are truly in love with each other, and they've been in love with each other, and they've been pining after each other. They just haven't been able to actually talk about it, and so I just thought that was very interesting. What was I gonna say? I really feel like the cousins situation in this book was very confusing, which I know Gentry and the way that things are done is often very confusing, you know, like how things get passed, but it was more confusing in this book than I think some of the other books. I just really struggled with kind of being like, okay, so like the people that all have the name Elliot obviously makes sense that they're cousins, but like how did the other cousins kind of factor in? And then like they called or the sisters-in-law called somebody aunt, but it's not really an aunt, it's a sister-in-law, you know, like it was just, there was a lot of those family things that was just a little hard for me to follow. So yeah, it still overall pretty good book. I would probably give this one a 2.5, maybe a 3. Again, just Jane Austen is a classic, and I love the simpleness of what Austen can be, especially when you get a well done rendition of Austen, either in, you know, like a movie or a short mini series or something like that. I tend to like the mini series more than I do the movies, with the exception of Emma. 2020 movie is hands down one of the best. This one is just so easy to like predict, and it's just so obviously simple that I don't like it as much as some of the other ones where it's like, you know, it's obvious who they're gonna wind up with, but like not as like obvious in the reasoning behind it. This one, you know, the reasoning is just they get a second chance at love, and that's all there is to it. But being that Jane Austen is a classic, I do love that it is an understandable classic, and I think that's one of the keys to why Austen is still so very popular, is because it's just so simple and easy to devour. Even, you know, with the older language and whatnot, it's still just very easy to devour, much like Alexander Dumas. Like, you know, his stuff is like Count of Monte Cristo is one of my favorite books because it was easy to read and devour it, even though there's so much going on in that book, so much going on. But it's, you know, it's easy to devour. The kicker, I think, for Austen is that everything is the same. It's always the same. So anyway, very long video here, but that is my thoughts on Persuasion by Austen. I did also listen to, I read while I was listening to the dramatized version. Read by Florence Pugh. It took me a minute to get into that one. Like, I love Florence, don't get me wrong, but like her reading was just very deadpan, unlike Emma Thompson, who was just vivacious as she's reading. This one was a little bit more deadpan, so it took me a little bit to get into it, but once I got past that, it was pretty good. So there you have it. As always, like, comment, subscribe, share, and especially comment books for me to read. I'm hoping that I can get a little bit more time this summer to read, but I do have a lot to do this summer. So, as of right now, back to my usual book a week reading speed level. So, we will see. But continue to comment books that you think I might be interested in, and I will see you next time. Bye.